My name is Lorraine, and at 56 years old, I thought I had seen everything life could throw at me. I raised my daughter Stephanie alone, built a successful career, and watched her grow into a beautiful woman. Her wedding day was supposed to be the happiest moment of my life. But when her fiancé introduced me to his boss as an unemployed loser, everything changed. What happened next, nobody saw coming. Before I share what unfolded that day, I would love to know where you are watching from. If you have ever felt underestimated or dismissed, go ahead and hit that like button. Subscribe, because this story will remind you that truth always finds its way to the surface. Now, let me take you back to where it all began, because this story is about more than just a wedding day. I need to tell you about my life before that wedding, so you understand why what happened cut so deep. I was born and raised in Austin, Texas, in a middle-class family that valued hard work above everything else. My parents taught me that if you wanted something in life, you had to earn it. So I did. I studied business in college, graduated with honors, and landed my first job in finance when I was 22. The work was demanding, but I loved it. I loved the challenge of balancing numbers, making strategic decisions, and watching companies grow because of the advice I gave. When I was 25, I married a man named Gary. He was charming at first, the kind of man who could light up a room with his smile. But after we got married, things changed. He drank too much. He became angry. There were nights when I would lock myself in the bathroom, holding my breath, praying he would just fall asleep. When I got pregnant with Stephanie, I thought maybe a baby would change him. It did not. If anything, it made things worse. He resented the attention I gave to our daughter. He resented the fact that I was succeeding at work while he bounced from job to job. When Stephanie turned 3, I made the hardest decision of my life. I left him. I packed our things while he was out, found a small apartment, and started over. Being a single mother was not easy, but it was better than living in fear. I worked long hours sometimes, taking on extra projects, just to make sure Stephanie had everything she needed. I wanted her to have dance classes, art supplies, birthday parties with her friends. I wanted her to feel secure, even if it was just the two of us. My career continued to grow. By the time I was 35, I had worked my way up to Vice President of Finance at a technology company in Houston. It was a good company, stable, with smart people who respected my work. I handled budgets in the millions, negotiated contracts, mentored younger employees. One of those employees was a young man named David Thornton. He was fresh out of college, eager to learn, and I saw potential in him. I taught him how to read financial reports, how to present to executives, how to handle pressure. He always said I changed his career trajectory, but I just saw someone who needed guidance. Stephanie and I were close when she was young. We would cook together on weekends, watch movies, curled up on the couch, talk about her day at school. I told her stories about my own childhood, about her grandparents, about the importance of being kind and working hard. She was a bright kid full of energy and curiosity. I was so proud of her. When she got into Texas A&M to study marketing, I cried tears of joy. All those years of sacrifice felt worth it. But something shifted during her college years. She made new friends, kids from wealthy families who summered in Europe and drove expensive cars their parents bought them. Stephanie started coming home less often. When she did visit, she seemed distant. She would mention parties at country clubs, internships, at prestigious firms, friends whose parents were CEOs and senators. I could feel her pulling away, like she was embarrassed that I was just a working mum in a modest house. It hurt, but I told myself it was just a phase. She was finding her own identity. She would come back to me. Then 3 years ago, my company was acquired by a larger corporation. They restructured everything, cutting positions and consolidating departments. I was offered an early retirement package. After 30 years in the workforce, after countless late nights and stressful deadlines, I was tired. The package was generous enough that I could live comfortably without working. So I accepted. I thought Stephanie would be happy for me, that I could finally rest. But when I told her, she just said, "Oh, okay," in this flat voice. Like I had disappointed her. Like choosing to retire at 53 was something to be ashamed of. I tried to fill my days with things that brought me joy. I volunteered at the local library helping kids with reading programs. I took painting classes at the community center. I traveled a little visiting friends in different states. But every time Stephanie called, which was not often, I could hear the judgment in her voice. When her friends asked what her mum did, she would say she is retired, like it was an apology. It stung more than I wanted to admit. About a year and a half ago, Stephanie called me with excitement in her voice that I had not heard in years. "Mum, I met someone," she said. "His name is Bradley Hamilton, and he is incredible. We are going to dinner next week, and I want you to meet him." I was thrilled. Maybe this man would make her happy. Maybe he would bring her back to me, remind her of the values I had tried to instill. The dinner was at an upscale restaurant in Dallas, the kind with cloth napkins and waiters who refill your water glass before you even notice it is empty. Bradley was already there when I arrived, sitting next to Stephanie in a tailored suit that probably cost more than my monthly grocery bill. He stood when I approached, shook my hand with a firm grip, and said, "Mrs. Mitchell, pleasure to meet you." He was handsome in a polished way, with perfectly styled hair and a watch that caught the light every time he moved his wrist. We sat down, and the conversation started pleasantly enough. Bradley talked about his job at Crestwood Financial, a consulting firm that worked with major corporations. He dropped names of companies I recognized, mentioned deals he was working on, described his office view overlooking downtown Dallas. Stephanie looked at him with admiration, hanging on every word. I tried to engage, asking questions about his work, but he answered in a way that made me feel like I would not understand the complexities. Then he turned to me. "So what do you do, Lorraine?" he asked. I could have said I was retired after a successful career. I could have mentioned my years as a VP, the projects I led, the people I mentored. But something about his tone made me hesitant. "I am currently not working," I said. "I took early retirement." He nodded slowly, his expression neutral, but I caught something in his eyes. A flicker of judgment, maybe even pity. "Oh," he said, "that must be nice." Then he turned back to Stephanie and resumed talking about his latest business trip to New York. The rest of the dinner felt like I was watching from outside myself. Bradley dominated the conversation, and Stephanie let him. When I tried to share a story about a funny thing that happened at the library, Bradley listened politely, but did not ask any follow-up questions. When the check came, he insisted on paying, waving away my offer to contribute. "I have got it," he said. "No problem at all. It should have felt generous, but instead, it felt like another way of putting me in my place." After dinner, Stephanie walked me to my car. "So what do you think?" she asked, her face hopeful. "He seems very confident," I said carefully. Stephanie beamed. "He is not he? He is going places, Mum. I am so lucky." I hugged her goodbye, but as I drove home, unease settled in my stomach like a stone. Over the next several months, I saw Bradley a handful of times. Each encounter left me feeling smaller. Once we met for brunch at Stephanie's apartment. Bradley was talking about buying a house, showing us pictures on his phone of properties with multiple bedrooms and marble countertops. I mentioned that location was important for resale value, drawing on my years of watching real estate trends for investment purposes. Bradley laughed, not unkindly, but dismissively. "With all due respect, Lorraine, real estate is complicated. You would not really understand the market dynamics." Stephanie said nothing. She just sipped her mimosa and changed the subject. Another time Bradley came to my house. It was the first time he had visited, and I had cleaned everything, put fresh flowers on the table, baked cookies. He walked through the living room, glancing around with an expression I could not quite read. "Cozy place," he said. The word cozy felt like code for small, for inadequate, for not good enough. I showed him the garden I had been working on, the tomatoes I was growing. He nodded politely, but checked his phone twice while I was talking. I tried to talk to Stephanie about my concerns. We were having coffee one afternoon, just the two of us, and I worked up the courage. "Honey, are you sure about Bradley?" I asked gently. "He seems a bit, I do not know, dismissive sometimes." Her face hardened immediately. Dismissive. "Mom, he is successful. He is ambitious. Not everyone wants to just give up and retire at 50. The words hit me like a slap. I felt my eyes sting, but I blinked the tears back. "I did not give up," I said quietly. "I worked for 30 years. I earned my rest." She sighed. "I know, Mom. I'm sorry. I need you to be supportive, okay? Bradley is important to me." So I swallowed my hurt and nodded. 6 months before the wedding, Bradley proposed. They had a big engagement party at a fancy restaurant, and I met his family for the first time. His father, Charles, was a successful lawyer. His mother, Patricia, was a surgeon. His younger sister, Allison, worked in marketing for a pharmaceutical company. They were polished, educated, and made it clear they lived in a different world than I did. Patricia asked me in that sweet voice that is somehow more cutting than rudeness, "So, Lorraine, what keeps you busy these days?" "I volunteer at the library," I said. "And I have been taking painting classes." "How leisurely," she replied with a tight smile. Charles did not ask me anything at all. He talked to Bradley about golf and investments and barely acknowledged my presence. During his engagement speech, Bradley stood up with a champagne glass and talked about how lucky he was to have found Stephanie. "She is everything I could ask for," he said. Beautiful, smart, and from a humble background that taught her the value of hard work. The word humble hung in the air. It felt like a polite way of saying less than. I sat there, hands folded in my lap, trying to keep my face neutral. When I got home that night, I sat on my bed and cried. I felt like I had failed Stephanie somehow, like my life was something she needed to overcome. The wedding planning process was torture. Stephanie and Bradley wanted a large, elegant affair at a resort outside Dallas. The budget was over $100,000, most of it covered by Bradley's parents. I offered to contribute what I could, but Stephanie brushed it off. "It is okay, Mum. Bradley's parents have it covered. They want to do this." I felt pushed to the sidelines like a guest rather than the mother of the bride. When it came time to shop for the wedding dress, Patricia and Allison went with Stephanie. I was invited, but I got stuck in traffic and arrived 30 minutes late. By the time I walked into the bridal boutique, Stephanie was already standing on the platform in a stunning white gown surrounded by mirrors. "Oh, Mom, you made it," she said, but her tone was flat. Patricia stood beside her, adjusting the veil. "We could not wait, dear," Patricia said to me. "The appointment was scheduled, and we did not want to lose our slot." I stood in the corner and watched as they fussed over my daughter, offering opinions, taking photos. No one asked what I thought. When Stephanie chose the dress, I smiled and said it was beautiful. But inside I felt hollow. The wedding planner meetings were no better. Bradley and his family made most of the decisions. I suggested tulips for the bouquets because they were Stephanie's favorite when she was little. Bradley shook his head. "We are going with roses. They are more classic." He did not ask Stephanie what she wanted. He just decided. And she went along with it, nodding and smiling, like her opinion did not matter either. I wanted to scream, to shake her and remind her who she used to be, but I stayed silent. 2 weeks before the wedding, I could not take it anymore. I invited Stephanie over for lunch, just the two of us. We sat at my kitchen table, the same table where she had done her homework as a kid, where we had eaten countless meals together. "Sweetheart," I said, my voice shaking slightly, "I feel like I'm losing you." She put down her fork. "Mom, you are not losing me. I am just growing up." "I know," I said. "But Bradley, he does not treat me with respect, and you do not seem to notice." She stiffened. "Bradley is under a lot of stress with work and the wedding. He does not mean anything by it." I pressed on even though I could see her shutting down. "He called our background humble, like it is something to be ashamed of. I worked hard to give you everything. And I appreciate that, Mom," she said, her voice rising. "But Bradley's world is different. His family is different. I need to fit in. At the cost of who you are," I asked. "At the cost of our relationship." She stood up abruptly. "Why can you not just be happy for me? Why do you always have to criticize?" "I am not criticizing," I said desperately. "I am worried." "Well, do not be," she snapped. "I am fine. Bradley is fine. We are going to have a beautiful wedding, and I hope you can just be supportive." She left, and I sat there staring at the door, wondering when everything had gone so wrong. The days leading up to the wedding were lonely. I talked to my best friend Grace, who had known me for over 20 years. She listened patiently as I poured out my heart. "Sometimes kids need to learn their own lessons," Grace said gently. "Just be there when she needs you." So I decided that is what I would do. I would show up, smile, and support my daughter even if it killed me inside. I bought a navy blue dress that was elegant but not flashy. I practiced my smile in the mirror. I told myself I could get through one day. The wedding day arrived on a beautiful Saturday in late September. The sky was clear, the temperature perfect. I woke up early in my hotel room near the resort, my stomach churning with nerves. I took my time getting ready, applying makeup carefully to hide the dark circles under my eyes from nights of poor sleep. I put on the navy dress, clasped my grandmother's pearl necklace around my neck, and looked at myself in the mirror. "You can do this," I whispered. "Today is about Stephanie." I drove to the resort and made my way to the bridal suite, where Stephanie was getting ready. When I walked in, she was sitting in a chair, while a makeup artist worked on her face. Patricia and Allison were already there, sipping champagne and laughing about something. "Good morning, sweetheart," I said. "You look beautiful." Stephanie opened her eyes and gave me a tired smile. "Thanks, Mum." The room felt crowded, and I realized quickly that there was not much for me to do. Patricia had already handled the flowers, made sure the dress was steamed, coordinated with the photographer. I stood awkwardly by the window, feeling like an intruder. After a while, I excused myself and went outside to get some air. I found Grace, who had arrived early to support me. She took one look at my face and pulled me into a hug. "Hang in there," she whispered, "just a few more hours." I nodded, blinking back tears. The ceremony took place outside by the lake, with rows of white chairs set up for the 200 guests. I sat in the front row, right next to Grace. Across the aisle, Bradley's family sat in matching formal attire, looking like they had stepped out of a magazine. When the music started, everyone stood. Stephanie appeared at the end of the aisle, and my breath caught. She looked radiant in her white gown, her hair swept up, her face glowing. But she was not walking with me. She was walking with Gary, her father, who had barely been in her life for the past 25 years. Bradley had tracked him down and invited him, thinking it would be a nice gesture. Stephanie had agreed without asking how I felt about it. I watched my daughter walk toward her future with a man who had abandoned her, and I felt a piece of my heart break. But I kept my composure. I smiled. I clapped when they exchanged vows. I wiped away tears that everyone probably thought were tears of joy. When the officiant pronounced them husband and wife, everyone cheered. I cheered too, even though I felt like I was watching my daughter walk away from me forever. After the ceremony, guests moved to the cocktail area while the bride and groom took photos. I stood with Grace, sipping champagne that tasted like nothing. People milled around talking and laughing. Most of them were Bradley's friends and colleagues. People in expensive suits discussing stock portfolios and vacation homes. I tried to make small talk with a few guests, but the conversations felt forced. One woman asked me how I knew the couple, and when I said I was the bride's mother, she said, "Oh, how lovely," and then immediately turned to talk to someone else. Grace squeezed my hand. "You are doing great," she said. I nodded, but I felt exhausted, and the hardest part had not even happened yet. After the cocktail hour, guests began making their way into the reception hall. It was stunning with high ceilings, chandeliers dripping with crystals, and tables covered in white linens and rose centerpieces. I walked slowly, taking it all in, trying to find something to feel happy about. Grace stayed close to me, a steady presence. We were almost to our table when I heard Bradley's voice behind me. "Hey, Lorraine, come here for a second." I turned around. Bradley was standing a few feet away with an older man I did not recognize. The man was tall, probably in his early 60s, with silver hair and a confident posture. He wore a perfectly tailored suit and had the air of someone used to being in charge. I walked over, and Bradley put his hand on my shoulder in a way that felt possessive rather than affectionate. "I want you to meet my boss," he said. "This is David Thornton, Managing Director at Crestwood Financial." I extended my hand, forcing a polite smile. "Nice to meet you, Mr. Thornton." David shook my hand, and I noticed he was studying my face like he was trying to place me. Bradley continued talking, and his tone shifted to something I can only describe as condescending. "This is Lorraine Stephanie's mum. She is currently unemployed, retired early or something like that." The words stung, but what came next was worse. Bradley let out a small laugh like he was sharing a joke. "Honestly, she has been out of the workforce so long, I doubt she would even recognize the business world today. Kind of a loser in that sense, you know." He said it so casually, like he was commenting on the weather. I felt the ground shift beneath me. My face went hot, and my hands started trembling. I could not believe he had just called me a loser. At his own wedding, in front of his boss. Grace, who was standing just behind me, gasped quietly. I could feel her hand on my back steadying me. I wanted to say something to defend myself, but my throat felt tight. David Thornton stood there silent for a moment, his expression unreadable. Then his eyes widened slightly, and he tilted his head. "Lorraine," he said slowly. "Lorraine Mitchell." I nodded, my voice barely a whisper. "Yes, that is my maiden name." David's face broke into a smile, a genuine one. "I thought I recognized you." "It has been, 15 years?" Bradley looked confused, his smug expression faltering. "Wait, you two know each other?" David turned to Bradley, and his smile disappeared. "Know each other." Bradley Lorraine, here was my mentor when I was just starting out in finance. I could see the color drain from Bradley's face. David continued, his voice firm. "Back in the early 2000s, I was a junior analyst at Sterling Investments in Houston. Lorraine was the vice president of finance there. She took me under her wing, taught me everything I know about financial strategy, client relations, and how to lead with integrity. I felt frozen, unable to process what was happening. David looked at me with warmth and respect. "Lorraine, you were brilliant. You handled the merger with Techmark like an absolute master. I watched you negotiate deals that saved hundreds of jobs. Everyone in that office looked up to you. You were a legend." He turned back to Bradley, and his tone turned cold. "And you just called her a loser," Bradley stammered. I did not know. I had no idea." David cut him off. "You did not know because you did not bother to ask. You did not bother to respect the woman who raised your wife. You just made assumptions and insulted her in public." People nearby had started to notice the tension. Conversations quieted. Heads turned. David was not finished. Lorraine left Sterling to take care of her daughter as a single mother. Then she worked her way up to VP at another firm before accepting an early retirement package because the company valued her contributions. That is not being a loser, Bradley. That is being successful on your own terms. Stephanie appeared beside us, her face pale. "What is going on?" she asked. David looked at her with sympathy. "Your husband just introduced your mother as an unemployed loser in front of me." Stephanie's eyes went wide and she turned to Bradley. "What? How could you—" I finally found my voice, though it came out shaky. "It is true, sweetheart. He said I am a loser because I am not working." Stephanie looked horrified. She stared at Bradley, waiting for him to say something, to apologize, to explain. But Bradley just stood there, his mouth opening and closing, like a fish out of water. "I was just joking," he finally said. "Mr. Thornton." "I did not mean it like that." David shook his head. "Joking? You humiliated her. At your own wedding, in front of your boss." He turned to me, his expression softening. "Lorraine, I am so sorry you had to hear that. You deserve so much better." I nodded, tears threatening to spill, but I held them back. David looked at Bradley one more time. "We will talk about this on Monday, professionally." The implication was clear. Bradley had just jeopardized his career. I took a deep breath and looked at Stephanie. Her eyes were filled with tears. "I came here today to support you," I said quietly, even though I have felt pushed aside for months. "But I will not stand here and be insulted." I turned and walked away, Grace following close behind. Behind me, I could hear Stephanie calling my name, but I did not stop. I walked out of the reception hall, through the lobby, and into the garden by the lake. Only then did I let myself break down. Grace held me as I cried, my body shaking with the weight of everything I had been holding in for so long. How could he say that I sobbed, in front of everyone? Grace rubbed my back. He showed his true colors, Law, and now everyone saw it. But it does not change who you are. You are not a loser. You are one of the strongest people I know. We sat on a bench by the water, and I tried to pull myself together. After a while, I told Grace I wanted to leave. I could not go back in there. I could not sit through dinner and speeches and pretend everything was fine. Grace nodded and walked me back to the hotel. She stayed with me for a while, making sure I was okay, before heading back to the reception to grab her things. About an hour later, there was a knock on my hotel room door. I opened it expecting Grace, but it was Stephanie. She was still in her wedding dress, her makeup smudged from crying. "Mum," she said, her voice breaking. "I am so sorry." I stepped aside and let her in. She looked around the small room and then sat on the edge of the bed. "I left the reception," she said. "I could not stay after what happened." I sat down next to her. "You left your own wedding." She nodded. "I told Bradley I needed to talk to you first. I could not just let you leave like that." We sat in silence for a moment, and then she started crying again. "I have been a terrible daughter. I let Bradley and his family make me feel like our life before was not good enough. I forgot what you sacrificed for me." I put my arm around her. "I never wanted you to feel that way. I just wanted you to be happy." She turned to me, her eyes red. "I thought I was happy, but watching Bradley humiliate you like that, I realized he does not respect the people I love. How can I spend my life with someone like that?" I did not know what to say. "That is something you have to decide, sweetheart." She told me she had confronted Bradley after I left. He had tried to excuse it, saying he was just trying to impress Mr. Thornton by making a joke. A joke, she repeated bitterly, about my mother. I asked her what she was going to do. She shook her head. "I do not know. We just got married. But I think I need some space from him. I need to figure out what I really want." I squeezed her hand. "You can stay with me. For as long as you need. She looked at me with gratitude and relief. Really? Of course, I said. Always. We sat together for a long time talking about everything. She apologized for the way she had treated me over the past few years, for making me feel like I was not good enough. I apologized for not speaking up sooner, for letting things get so bad before saying something. By the time the sun started to set, we both felt lighter, like a weight had been lifted. Stephanie sent Bradley a text message. I need time to think. Do not contact me. He called immediately, but she did not answer. He called again and again, but she turned off her phone. That night, she stayed in my hotel room, sleeping in the other bed, just like when she was a little girl, and we would go on road trips together. I lay awake for a while listening to her breathe, and for the first time in a long time, I felt like I had my daughter back. The weeks following the wedding were a strange mix of pain and healing. Stephanie moved back into my house, taking her old bedroom. It felt surreal to have her there again, like we had gone back in time. We fell into old routines, cooking breakfast together, watching movies in the evening, talking late into the night. She told me everything about how Bradley had slowly made her feel like she needed to be someone different, someone more polished and less connected to her past. She told me about the comments his family made, the way they looked down on people who were not in their social circle. Bradley tried to reach out constantly. He sent flowers, left voicemails, even showed up at the house once. Stephanie refused to see him. She told him she needed space, that she could not just forgive what he had done. He sent me a letter, apologizing for his words, saying he had been nervous and stupid. I did not respond. Some things cannot be fixed with an apology. After 2 months of reflection, Stephanie made her decision. She filed for divorce. It was not easy. There were legal battles over assets, tense meetings with lawyers. But she was resolute. I cannot be with someone who does not respect my family, she told me. And I cannot be with someone who made me ashamed of where I came from. I was proud of her for standing up for herself, even though I knew it hurt. Bradley faced consequences at work too. David Thornton did not fire him, but he made it clear that Bradley's behavior was unacceptable. The promotion Bradley had been expecting was given to someone else. David called me a few weeks after the wedding to check in. I told him I appreciated what he had done standing up for me like that. He said it was the least he could do, that I had changed his life when I mentored him all those years ago. As for me, I started finding my footing again. I decided to do some freelance consulting for small businesses that needed financial advice but could not afford big firms. It was rewarding work, and it reminded me that I still had value to offer. I was not just some retired woman with nothing to contribute. I was experienced, knowledgeable, and capable. Stephanie started a new job too, at a marketing firm that valued creativity over prestige. She seemed happier, more like her old self. Our relationship grew stronger than it had been in years. We talked openly about everything, about her fears and insecurities, about my loneliness and hurt. We went to a few therapy sessions together, working through the pain of the past few years. It was not always easy, but it was necessary. Slowly, we rebuilt the trust that had been broken. One evening, about 6 months after the wedding, Stephanie and I were sitting on the porch watching the sunset. She turned to me and said, "I am sorry it took something so awful for me to see what really mattered." I took her hand. "Sometimes we need to lose our way to find it again." She smiled, and for the first time in a long time, it reached her eyes. Looking back now, I realized that day at the wedding was a turning point for both of us. When Bradley called me an unemployed loser in front of his boss, he thought he was putting me in my place. He thought he was elevating himself by diminishing me. But what he actually did was reveal who he truly was. And David Thornton, the young man I had mentored all those years ago, reminded everyone in that room that success is not just about titles and paychecks. It is about integrity, respect, and how you treat people when you think no one important is watching. I learned that my worth is not defined by whether I have a job or how much money I make. I spent 30 years building a career, raising a daughter on my own, and contributing to my community. I earned my rest. I earned the right to spend my days however I choose. And anyone who cannot see that does not deserve a place in my life. Stephanie learned that love should never require you to shrink yourself or be ashamed of where you come from. She learned that the people who truly care about you will lift you up, not make you feel like you need to hide parts of yourself. She is still healing from the experience, but she is stronger for it. That day at the wedding, Bradley tried to humiliate me in front of his boss. But instead, the truth came out. And in the end, I got something far more valuable than revenge. I got my daughter back, and that is worth more than any job title or paycheck could ever be. So let me ask you something. Have you ever had someone underestimate you only to be proven wrong? Have you ever stood up for yourself when it felt impossible? Drop a comment below and share your story. I would love to hear it. And if this story resonated with you, please hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. Share this video with someone who needs to hear that their worth is not defined by other people's opinions. Thank you so much for listening to my story. I hope it reminds you that the truth always comes to light and that the people who love you will always find their way back. Take care of yourselves and remember you are enough exactly as you are.